The chair is still there. It's the first thing I see every morning, before my eyes fully adjust, before the day decides what kind of weight it's going to carry. Same place by the window. Same quiet presence. The light reaches it before it reaches me, and I've started to think that means something, though I don't rush to explain it anymore. My name is Raghav. I'm 72 years old. Saying that out loud still feels strange. Not because I don't believe it, but because I remember so clearly being the man who thought 72 belonged to someone else, someone distant, someone already finished with the important parts. I didn't plan to record this. There was no moment where I said, "Today is the day." It happened the way most things happen now, slowly, quietly, without announcement. I woke up with a heaviness that wasn't pain, not exactly, more like a pressure behind the ribs, the kind that tells you something has been waiting too long. I sat at the table, across from the chair, and realized I'd been doing that for years without ever really looking at it. I keep it empty on purpose. I straighten it. I dust it. I make sure it's always pulled in just enough to look intentional. People notice, even if they don't comment. Once, a neighbor asked if someone was expected. I said no. The word came out easily, too easily. The chair has been in this house for almost as long as I have. We bought it because it matched the table. Nothing sentimental about it at the time. Back then, life was full of decisions that felt practical and harmless. I believed meaning arrived later, after enough of those decisions stacked up. When the chair was new, it was never empty. I worked most of my life repairing machines. Things with clear problems, clear solutions. You listen carefully, find the fault, fix it, move on. I was good at that kind of work. It rewarded patience and quiet attention. No guessing what someone meant, no reading between lines. At home, I brought that same quiet with me. I thought it was stability. I thought it was kindness. I didn't know silence could become a language of its own. The chair sat across from mine at the table, close enough that our knees touched sometimes. I remember shifting away slightly, not out of irritation, just habit, wanting my own space. I didn't think those moments added up to anything. There are sounds missing from the house now. Small sounds. A spoon hitting ceramic. A breath taken before speaking. The scrape of that chair against the floor in the evening. I noticed their absence more than I ever noticed their presence. I don't remember the first time the chair stayed empty. I remember the last time it wasn't. It was an ordinary night. Dinner had gone cold. The television was on but muted. I was reading something I couldn't tell you now. I looked up once, saw the chair occupied, and went back to what I was doing. I didn't look again. That moment has replayed itself so many times it feels edited. Memory has trimmed away the background, the clutter, the things that don't matter anymore. All that remains is the space between noticing and acting. A space I mistook for nothing. People imagine loss as something loud, as a moment that splits time in two. For me, it arrived quietly. It sat down, waited, and then stayed. Afterward, people told me to change the house, rearrange, remove reminders. I nodded. I thanked them. I didn't do any of it. At first, the chair stayed because moving it felt wrong, like pretending something hadn't happened. Later, it stayed because it was the only proof that something had. I eat alone now, slowly. I notice the sounds my body makes, the clock ticking, the refrigerator humming like it's thinking about something. Sometimes I set 2 cups down without realizing it. Sometimes I don't notice until I'm already sitting. There's a particular time in the late afternoon when the light softens everything. That's when it's hardest not to speak out loud, not to fill the space with something that used to live there naturally. I wasn't unkind. I hold on to that because it's true. I didn't shout. I didn't disappear. I was present every day. Same routines, same reliability. I thought that was enough. What I didn't understand was that silence also makes promises, and those promises don't always age well. I grew up in a family that didn't talk much. Care was shown through consistency, through staying, through not leaving. I learned early that words were optional, that if you were there, that was proof enough. That belief followed me for decades. There was a winter evening, years ago, when the power went out. We lit candles and sat at the table with our coats still on. The chair was pulled close to mine. Our elbows touched. The room felt small in the candlelight, like the rest of the world had been set aside. Something was being offered then, not loudly, not clearly. A pause, a look that lingered a moment longer than usual. I noticed it. I know I did. I stayed quiet. I told myself I was being respectful, giving space. I didn't want to push. I didn't want to open something I might not know how to close. I see now that I made a choice. I just didn't recognize it as one. After that night, nothing broke. Life continued. Meals were eaten. The chair stayed filled. That's what made it dangerous. I used continuity as proof that there are mornings now when I don't rush to get up. Not because I'm tired, but because I want to notice where I am before the day carries me away. The ceiling above the bed has a faint crack that runs like a thin line across it. I don't remember when it appeared. Maybe it's always been there. Or maybe I'm only seeing it now because I finally look. At 72, you begin to understand how much of life you lived without really arriving in it. I move slowly into the kitchen. Every step has a sound. The floor remembers me, even if I forget myself sometimes. And there it is again, the chair, waiting, always in the same place, like it doesn't trust me to remember where it belongs. I used to think memory worked in straight lines, that you moved forward and left things behind. Now it feels more like circles. I keep returning to the same moments, each time noticing something I missed before. There's one afternoon that comes back to me more than others. The windows were open, warm air moving through the room. The chair wasn't pulled in properly. It was turned slightly, as if whoever sat there hadn't settled completely. That detail stays with me, the unfinished way it faced the table. There was a pause that day, a real one, the kind that asks to be filled. I remember looking down instead of up. I remember thinking, later, not because I didn't care, but because I believed later was guaranteed. Nothing teaches you otherwise until it's too late to argue. After the chair became empty for good, the house didn't feel sad right away. It felt confused, like it was waiting for instructions it never received. I walked through rooms unsure of what they were for anymore. Even the table felt oversized, like it had been built for a life that no longer lived here. People say time heals. I don't know about that. Time dulls some things, sharpens others. What it really does is remove the urgency to pretend. I stopped pretending I was fine somewhere around year 3. That's when the chair stopped feeling temporary, when I realized I wasn't waiting for someone to come back. I was waiting for myself to understand something I had avoided. I thought love was proven by endurance, by staying, by being reliable. I see now that I confused consistency with connection. I was present without being reachable, steady without being open. The cost of that didn't show up immediately. It waited patiently, like the chair does now. There were evenings when words hovered between us, almost formed. I felt them. I know I did. They made me uncomfortable, not because they were wrong, but because they asked something of me. Attention, vulnerability, a response. Silence felt safer. Silence asked nothing. What no one tells you is that silence doesn't stay neutral. It collects meaning. It becomes an answer, all on its own. Now, when I sit across from the chair, I understand that what I lost wasn't only a person. It was timing, alignment. The moment when two people are looking in the same direction at the same time. You don't get unlimited chances at that. My hands don't work the way they used to. I drop things more often. I pause mid-movement, unsure why I stood up in the first place. My body is teaching me the same lesson the chair did: attention matters. Sometimes, late at night, I place my hand on the back of the chair before turning off the light. Not as a ritual, just a pause. A quiet acknowledgement of what shaped me, even through absence. I don't imagine conversations anymore. I don't replay arguments. I don't try to rewrite the past. That phase passed. What remains is simpler and heavier. Awareness. Awareness that presence asks for participation. That being there is not the same as being with. That some truths don't raise their voices, they wait, and if you don't meet them halfway, they eventually stop coming. The chair stays empty because it tells the truth better that way. If it were filled again, even in memory, I might soften what I've learned. I might tell myself it was almost enough, that things were nearly said. But almost has a sound. It's quiet, like a chair being pushed back slowly and never pulled in again. I don't regret my life. That word feels too loud, too clean. I lived, I stayed, I cared in the ways I knew how. What I carry now is more precise than regret. It's understanding. Understanding that time doesn't punish you for waiting. It simply keeps moving. I don't know how many more mornings I'll sit at this table. I do know that the chair will always tell the same story, whether anyone listens or not. I've said what I needed to say. If any part of this stayed with you longer than you expected, you don't need to explain it. You don't need to respond. You can just sit with it for a moment. That's enough.